Hi, this video we're going to talk about a specific feature that's available in items that is useful when you want to create apps for reviewing other stuff. So right here I have an example of such an app. We'll start by looking at this app a little and then we'll go into how we use the review feature. All right, so this app is created by admin. It's called Great Smartphones. And the idea behind this app is that people can add the smartphones that they really like and they can add the details. And then other people or the same person who added the phone can add reviews under each phone. And this app is the kind of experience where you could create an app like this with the specific fields that you care about uh, for a phone, saying, hey, I care about processor speed and display resolution and the camera, but I don't care about other stuff. So, you could kind of make your own or you could clone this app and do other things. But let's first look at, take a little deviation here. And whenever you're looking at an app, I might have mentioned this in one of the earlier videos, but whenever you're looking at an app, and this is an app because you know by now that this icon stands for an app, and this app is called Great Smartphones. And if it has this clone button next to it, that means that you can clone it, which means you can make a copy of the app for yourself and you can modify it if needed in any way, and then publish it and start posting content in that app. So that becomes a different copy of this app where only the structure of the app gets copied though whenever you clone something. So when you clone an app, the structure will get copied over, the content will not, and you can add your own content to that one. Now, so one category of apps in Meon is called clonable apps, apps which can be cloned. And there are several ways to get to them, but we'll get to that later. But basically, any app which has this icon, clickable link next to it, basically means that it can be cloned. Now, another category of apps another type of apps in Meon are apps which are hosted in the sense that they allow people to directly put content into them. So this app was created by the admin, and it was almost all the hosted apps on Meon, which are hosted by the Meon team itself, will be created by admin. And so this app is hosted with the intent that anybody can come in and add their own smartphones to this app itself. So in that sense, and how do we know that? We know that because down here we see that there's an item called smartphone under the Great Smartphones app, and that has a link here which says new smartphone, which basically means that it allows people to add new smartphones to this list of smartphones here. And the smartphone item itself, in this case, so basically, just to recap what we talked about, an app can either be clonable, hosted, or both. And you can write content directly into apps which are hosted, and you can clone any app which is clonable. All right, so now let's kind of dig a little deeper into this app. So this is Great Smartphones app. It has a smartphone item. So as always, to see the structure of the item, we can just click on this I link next to the item name here, and we'll be able to go in there. But before that, let's see that we can see that the current user, which is me, RC Anand, up here, has created this one smartphone model here and added a bunch of details. So you know that I created it because you see my name here. So in the admin's Great Smartphones app, I've created one smartphone here. So let's now look at the structure of the smartphone item. So let's go in here, click on the eye icon, and here again it shows you the smartphones that are listed. But interestingly, you can also see the fields that are in there, and you can see the child items. Let's just look at what the child items are. So there are two child items of the smartphone. One is a best price item, which people can add, what is the best price that they know for that given phone. And there's also a smartphone review here. And our focus in this video is to kind of look into this thing and how it got created and all that. But we can also see, this smartphone has all these fields. It has name, date launched, platforms, and so on. So one nice way to look at it is to directly look at it in the form. So you can add a new smartphone. So you can just click on this and you'll see this is how the form looks. So it has a name, it has a launch date, it has the platforms that it supports, the size in inches, and it has something called a computed field, which is basically a field type of expression which has a formula which computes a value based on other fields within the item. So in this case, it just converts the size in inches into centimeters, and it will be shown once you publish this, once you save or publish this item instance. And then it has RAM and other features like that. It has processor, camera, networks, and all that stuff. So this is a complete, fairly complete smartphone review app. And the interesting thing here, so let's kind of cancel out of this because we don't want to add another phone. We want to really see how we can make this reviewable. So let's look at the smartphone uh, item settings. So if you go look at the settings, you'll see down here that there was a checkbox or a setting where you could pick whether it's reviewable or not. And whenever you select this reviewable on an item, you will see that what it does is when the first instance of a smartphone is created, since the smartphone item itself is reviewable, it'll create a child item called smartphone review, and that's the one which got created here the moment I created this one. And it has a wonderful structure where it allows me to add review feedback not only for the whole phone, the phone as a whole, but also on each field here. So I can review the platforms and say, hey, this doesn't support as many platforms as I'd like it to, or I can review the size and say, hey, this is the perfect size I'm looking for, and so on. Now that just happens automatically by saying reviewable. So you don't have to create an explicit child item. You could instead of making it reviewable, you could say, I want to create the structure of my own child item, and you could just add a child item called review of smartphone or smartphone review, and you could add all the fields you wanted, and you could do that too. But in this case, we are not going to be in this case we didn't do that. So the smartphone item actually had the ability to be automatically reviewed. So let's look at this smartphone, the specific smartphone instance that I created, and you see all the characteristics here. But you can also add best prices that we saw, and then we can add reviews. Now, I cannot add another review for this smartphone because it's set up so that, again, we can look at the smartphone item, and we'll see that the maximum instances per user is 1. So a user can only create 1 review per smartphone. So we went and looked at the settings. We see that, oops, not for the smartphone, sorry, but for the review. So if we go down to the review item and look at its settings, you'll see that the maximum instances per user is 1, which means for any given smartphone instance, only 1 review instance can be created by any given user. So that's why I can't create another review here, and I can't really edit these settings either. But I just wanted to show you the structure of that review form. So in order to do that, let me just let's see, how do I do this? So let me create another smartphone, so that way I'll be able to show you how that works. So let me create another smartphone, let's say iPhone 6 or 7 that's coming out or come out right now. And let's say, I could actually specify date. So since it's a date field, it'll allow me to actually pick a date with a nice date picker here. These are just like little asides to see, and I can pick, it's an iOS phone, size. I could enter all these. I don't know the exact size, but let's just put in some numbers here. 4 GB battery, let's say 3000 mAh. Just guessing roughly, but say 1080 by 1920, and processor, A9, weight, say 120 grams, thickness, let's say 8 millimeters, and so on, right? So storage, let's say it has 16 GB, expandable storage, not supported. I'm sure most of this is wrong, but I'm just entering, stuff to show you how it works. So, buying platform versions, uh, you know, say iOS 9 plus, buying link. I'll just enter. So just generally adding a bunch of links over there, and let me publish it now. And now I've added this font. Now I can add a review. So the whole purpose of this exercise was to add a new review and show you. So now that I've added all these fields, so maybe the review needs to review every aspect that's been added. And so, let's add a review. Now you'll see how the automatic structure of what got created gives you the ability to give a full summary, like an overall review, and then you can say, hey, this is the name, and I can add feedback on the name. Not very interesting. Date launch, I could add feedback if there was something there. The platform, I can say iOS rocks. I can say, the size. I just love the size, and so on. So I can basically, this thing just shows the parent smartphone item instance content sort of all disabled, and it allows you to give feedback on every field of that. So that's the thing that you get by just selecting reviewable. So just by saying that it's reviewable, you got this entire structure right away. So that's the power of meon, where it takes one common feature where people tend to review a lot of things, and you have this ability to enter feedback on each and every aspect of that. So this similar feature could be used where, let's say, there's some kind of an official document which needs to be reviewed by a bunch of people. Then every section of that document needs to be reviewed. Then all you do is just make that document reviewable, and the moment the first instance gets created, then the others can, whoever is permitted to review it, will be allowed to review it. So one couple of things to note when you're using reviews. Reviews is a little bit of an advanced feature. So one guideline is to really, really decide the structure of your parent item, in this case, like the smartphone item, before you make it reviewable and allow people to start adding reviews. Because the moment you create the first instance, the structure is going to get uh, the child review item is going to get created based on the structure that was there at that time. So later on, if you try to, if you change the structure of the smartphone item, then the future reviews will probably get into some weird state, which, because they won't know how to review it, and you'll have different structures of the reviews, and I really don't even know what will happen in that situation. So it's really better to avoid changing the structure of an item after it has a review item under it created automatically, because that's basing it on the first instance that was created, and after that you're not really going to be able to change the structure of the parent item. And if you do, all bets are off, and you could get into all kinds of weird situations. In the best case, you don't see the data you want. In the worst case, things could start hanging and crashing and things like that. So please be aware of that one thing. And the other thing to note about reviews is that the in general, the review that's created is created based on the parent settings. So once the first, so one of the ways to kind of, if you're the owner of the app and you want to enable reviews, is to just create one instance when you know that the of the parent, like the smartphone instance in this case, and that forces the review item to get created, and then you can go and change the settings of the review. So you can go to that review item, which you'll see under child item, and then of the smartphone, and you can then go and change its settings. Let's say you want to say, hey, only these users can review this smartphone, or whatever else you want to specify in that. You can do that before you actually set it out into the big world, for others to go and start adding reviews. So that way you can, that's the way you would. So these are a couple of things to note. One is, don't change the structure of the parent item, in this case the smartphone, uh, once you've created an instance and the review item has been created. And secondly, once you create the smartphone, just create at least a dummy smartphone instance, just put in some values for the required fields, and then have the review item generated, and then you can change its settings, and then you can kind of make it more broadly available. All right, so that's about, and there are several apps which are review apps. You can explore them by just searching app names with the word great in them. There's like great movies, great books, there's great digital games, there's great digital apps. There's several apps which basically talk about how you can review different things, and each of them is structured differently. For example, the Great Games app has review as well as walkthroughs. So because games tend to have walkthroughs, you have things like that under it. So just explore around with these great apps, and you'll see a bunch of different types of ways to do reviews. And but also note another thing about Meon: any app you see here is not the final word. So if you don't like the way it's structured for your purposes, you can always go and create one in a few minutes. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So enjoy exploring the review apps, and thank you for listening. Bye.